Back at it again, Chapter 3, Video 5, and as always, we're going to start off with a joke. So, as some of you have heard, I've kind of put the challenge out there for you guys to come up with some of these jokes. So, to start this one off, we give a shout out to Tommy Larson for the joke of the day. So his was, what do you call a deer with no eyeballs? No idea. So, as always, take a couple of seconds, take it all in, get all the laughs out of the way, because things are going to get a little bit more serious here with the Civil War. So if you notice the heading on a lot that could be added on here, but I'm just going to give you kind of an overall generalization about what the life was like for African-American soldiers and women during the war. Now, this comes at a time after the Battle of Antietam, and the Union Army is starting to get to a turning point. And once we get to that turning point, Abraham Lincoln starts to feel a little bit more confident with his new idea of ending slavery, which wasn't kind of his plan to start off his presidency. Again, he never came out and said he wanted to end slavery. He just didn't want to expand it. But now he's starting to get to that point where he's going to reduce it, and it's going to be reduced in the South. So the Emancipation Proclamation is going to pretty much make it illegal to have a slave in the South. Now, it's kind of confusing again because the Confederates really don't listen to this because they don't think that they're part of the Union Army or the Union anymore. But it's done more as punishment. Punishment to those states that are in rebellion. Now, this does not get rid of slavery completely. There are still border states in the North that have slavery. He does not want to completely get rid of it at this time period. It's going to take a constitutional amendment before we get there. But if he thinks that if he does completely end it, well, then those border states are going to join the Confederacy. So he's not necessarily at that time. But anyways, the Emancipation Proclamation officially permits African Americans to enlist in the Union Army and the Union Navy. And because of that, thousands upon thousands of African Americans quickly joined the fight, even though they were still not given the same treatment. Not the same pay, not the same weapons, not the same uniforms. They were in different segregated regiments. So it's illegal to have slavery in the South, but it's still, or not to that time period of equality for African Americans or even women for that matter. Now, talking about life during the war. Now, life as a soldier, no matter what, it was going to be difficult. During a war, there's really no easy downtime where you're just kind of hanging out. So, food was very scarce, mostly in the South because that was kind of what their industry was going to be based off of. But again, we have these different sieges and different battles that are taking place, and a lot of these fields are going to be destroyed. Farming, new technology is going to start to help out because a lot of soldiers are leaving and there's not as much manpower as there used to be. Diseases were widespread. But women start to take over in a major role during the war. One of the most important positions was the nursing position. And battlefield medicine, it wasn't great. One of the most common things that would happen were amputations. They didn't have antibiotics like we do today. They didn't have just the basic technology that we're going to be using. But women are going to start the nursing profession kind of around this time period. And it was going to be started by Clara Barton, who quit her job at a patent office and decided to go out and help in the war effort. Now, women, they were not allowed to serve on the front lines. But that does not mean that they were not there. There were so many times that women had to go and save soldiers' lives. They had to actually go into those battles, and there were casualties. But the help and the overall impact that women had during the war with the nursing profession and being spies, and some dressed up as men and actually fought in the war. But that was going to be an important time period. Women are going to start to gain more and more rights, and World War I is going to also impact that as well. Now the turning point. So 3 major Union victories put the Confederacy on the defensive. And now we have General Grant, who is not necessarily in charge. He's gaining a little bit more power, even though a lot of people in the North don't like him. They don't like that he's going to go out and have these battles, not necessarily sticking to the Anaconda plan. But General Grant is starting to gain a little bit more fame, a little bit more power. And in May of 1863, he is going to try to take over the city of Vicksburg. Now, Vicksburg is in Mississippi, and the reason he wants to take over the city of Vicksburg and put it under Union control, he wants to split the Confederacy in 2. If they control the Mississippi River, they are going to cut them off, and there's going to be 2 different sides of the Confederacy. And again, a major disadvantage for the Confederacy is that they don't have railroads. They don't have that easy method of transportation. So by cutting them off, it's definitely going to hurt them. So in that May of 1863, the 2 assaults that he launches, they lose both of them. And morale, it changes a little bit. People are again starting to question why he's still continuing to attack Vicksburg. But he changes his plan a little bit. Instead of doing the all-out attack, he goes back to that idea of what the Anaconda Plan is going to be. And that's that he puts the city of Vicksburg under siege. Now what that means, they are completely surrounded. They are not allowed to bring in supplies, and those supplies are going to be out. And you're basically going to be starving out that one side. You're bombarding them. They're surrounded. They can't leave. They're going to run out of food. They're going to run out of water. They're going to run out of all the basic necessities that you need. And eventually the Confederates, they are going to surrender. And once they do surrender there, essentially they have it cut off into 2. Now we get to probably one of the biggest and most important battles, the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, as General Grant was working in Mississippi, a little bit more towards the western side, General Lee is making grounds on the eastern part. And Lee had been gaining large victories and started another invasion in the north. And it's kind of odd where the Battle of Gettysburg almost begins by mistake. And what I mean by that, there is kind of this rumor, or urban legend, if you want to call it that while they were in Pennsylvania, the Confederate Army, they were going around, they were searching for supplies, and they found out that they could seize a supply of shoes near Gettysburg. So while they are going for the supposed shoe supply, they come across the Union Army, and that is when they realize that there's going to be a battle. It's not going to be kind of a small skirmish like has happened throughout different aspects of the war. It's going to be a major battle. So on July 2nd, 1863, General Lee, he is going to attack. But the Union troops, they are able to hold their ground. They are outnumbered. They are definitely on the defensive. But Lee thinks it's going to be it's going to be a simple, quick battle. Now, when they're able to hold their ground, Lee becomes upset. And he organizes something known as Pickett's Charge. And Pickett's Charge, what that is, 15,000 soldiers are going to do an all-out attack, trying to make it up the hill, trying to destroy the Union. This backfires. Pickett's Charge causes 7,000 casualties in less than a half hour alone. And at this time, General Lee realizes he has to change the method of how war is going to be fought. And he has a very interesting quote here, and I'll read it here because I don't want to mess it up. But he says, "It's all my fault. It is I who lost." During the Battle of Gettysburg, 23,000 Union soldiers lost their lives. 28,000 soldiers lost their lives for the Confederacy. Now, after this, General Lee, he goes on the run. And this is definitely the turning point in the war in the East. Now the next issue is going to be Grant versus Lee. And as I said, General Grant starts to gain more and more fame. It's now at this point where he is officially going to be given command of the Union Army. And General Grant, he is relentless in his attacks of the South. He knows where General Lee is, and the Union, they are all out attacking. General Lee and the Confederates, they are on the run. They have no time to recover. He attacks them in Spotsylvania at the courthouse. He attacks them at Richmond, at Cold Harbor. He basically is just following General Lee and constantly annoying and constantly destroying their morale. And Lee, they just can't recover. On top of that, General Grant, they are putting towns under siege. And they're putting them under siege again because they want to cut off supplies to Richmond. And I've talked about Richmond before, but it's important because that's the capital of the Confederacy. So with all this, with the winning the Battle of Gettysburg by the Union and General Grant getting fame and getting the command to be in charge of the Union Army, we're almost at the point now where the Confederacy, they can either do an all-out attack or they can surrender. And that's where we're going to start with our next video.